In Module 3, Lesson 11, we're going to look at absolute value in terms of its magnitude and distance. Example 1 illustrates the absolute value of 10, and an absolute value is written as a number in between two vertical lines. So we'll look at the absolute value of 10 by finding 10 on the number line and then counting how many units from 0 10 is. So the absolute value of 10 is 10. It's 10 units away from 0. The follow-up question is, what other number has an absolute value of 10? In other words, what other number on the number line is 10 units away from 0? And we know that negative 10 is also 10 units away from 0. So we'll write with the absolute value symbol, remember, is the two vertical lines with a number in between. We write the absolute value of negative 10 is also equal to 10 because it is 10 units away from 0. Absolute value does not care which direction, only how far from 0. Please take a moment to read the definition of absolute value. And notice that it doesn't say which direction, just how far, the distance between a number and 0 on the number line. And a distance cannot be negative. So in exercises 1 and 3, we're going to practice the same concept with different numbers. In number 1, the first number we're talking about is negative 6. The absolute value of negative 6 would be 6. It is 6 units away from 0. And then we can graph negative 6 on the graph. And finally, a different number with the same absolute value would be 6. Second example is 8. The absolute value of 8 is 8. It is 8 units away from 0. Graphing 8 on the number line. Put a point right on 8. And then finally, a different number with the same absolute value would be negative 8. In our third example, the absolute value of negative 1 is 1. We'll graph 1 on the number line. And a different number with the same absolute value would be 1. Now, the purpose of absolute value is to really be able to compare numbers and find their magnitude. A magnitude is how large, how big something gets. So in example 2, Mrs. Owens received a call from her bank because she had a checkbook balance of negative $45. Then the question is, what was the magnitude of the amount overdrawn? To put that in other terms, the question is asking how much is the overdrawn amount? And when they ask a question like that, they're not, to say negative 45 would be a double negative because overdrawn already means that it's negative. So the magnitude of the amount overdrawn is $45. The account is overdrawn by $45. The magnitude of a quantity is found by taking the absolute value of its numerical part. So we'll practice in exercises 4 through 8 in finding the magnitude of each quantity. In question 4, Maria was sick with the flu and her weight change was -4 pounds. Then the question is, how much weight did Maria lose? She didn't lose -4. That would be a double negative. Maria lost 4 pounds. So we're using the absolute value of the number to show how much it is. Question 5. Jeffrey owes his friend $5. How much is Jeffrey's debt? A debt is something you owe. So Jeffrey owes. Jeffrey's debt is $5. And again, we don't say -5 because we're talking about his debt. So the magnitude of his debt is $5. Question 6. The elevation of Niagara Falls, which is located between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, is 326 feet. How far is this above sea level? And so we can say Niagara Falls is 326 feet above sea level. And in the same pattern, question number 7, how far below zero is -16 degrees Celsius? And we would say it is 16 degrees below zero. And in exercise 8, Frank received a monthly statement on his college savings account. It listed the deposit of 100 as plus 100, and it listed a withdrawal of 25 as -25. The statement showed an overall ending balance of $835.50. How much money did Frank add to his account that month? How much did he take out, and what is the total amount Frank has saved for college? So Frank added $100. He took out $25. And notice we don't put a negative sign on that amount because we were already saying that he took it out. And finally, his saved amount is $835.50. The total amount that Frank has saved for college. Continuing on with the exercises. If Meg is playing a card game and the cards have positive and negative numbers printed on them, then when Meg says the absolute value of the number on my card equals 8, her card could be 8 or it could be -8, since the absolute value of 8 and -8 are exactly the same. In question 10, list a positive and negative number whose absolute value is greater than 3. Now, there are clearly many possibilities. As a matter of fact, an infinite number of possibilities. But one example could be 10 and -10. Their absolute values are greater than 3. And then you should justify by putting them on the number line and showing how far away from 0 they are. In question 11, they ask us which situations can be represented by the absolute value of 10, and we're to check all that apply. The first one, temperature is 10 degrees below 0. Express this as an integer. If we need to write this amount as an integer, the number would be -10, and that is not showing absolute value. The second one, determine the size of Harold's debt if he owes $10. the size suggests that we are looking for its magnitude. So this one is showing absolute value. The next one, determine how far negative 10 is from 0 on a number line. And again, they're not asking us which direction, so it is also showing absolute value. And finally, 10 degrees is how many degrees above 0. Again, it's looking for a magnitude, so this as well is absolute value. In question 12, Julia used absolute value to find the distance between 0 and 6 on a number line. She then wrote a similar statement to represent the distance between 0 and negative 6. Below is her work. Is she correct? Well, she showed the absolute value symbols correctly, and then she said the absolute value of 6 is equal to 6, meaning that it is 6 units away from 0, and that's true. Then she said the absolute value of negative 6 is equal to negative 6. So she is not correct. Because absolute value is never negative. Question 13. Use absolute value to represent the amount in dollars of a $238.25 profit. Since absolute value is never negative, the number $238.25 is already its own absolute value. Question 14. Judy lost 15 pounds. Use absolute value to represent the number of pounds Judy lost. So we would be saying Judy lost 15 pounds, which is already stated there. The absolute value of negative 15, which is the integer that of the pounds that she lost, is 15. Question 15. In math class, Carl and Angela are debating about integers and absolute value. Carl said 2 integers can have the same absolute value, and Angela said 1 integer can have 2 absolute values. Who is right? And defend your answer. Well, Carl said that 2 integers can have the same absolute value, and as we've been practicing, and I will put an example here, the absolute value of 5 is equal to 5, and the absolute value of negative 5 is also equal to 5. So Carl is correct. 2 integers, 2 different integers, can have the same absolute value. Angela saying 1 integer can have 2 absolute values is the opposite. So she is incorrect. Question 16. Jamie told his math teacher, give me any absolute value, and I can tell you 2 numbers that have that absolute value. Is Jamie correct? For any given absolute value, will there always be 2 numbers that have that absolute value? Jamie is not correct because 0 has only 1 value, and it is the only exception to our rule. Every other number, every other absolute value has 2 numbers that match it. For example, if my absolute value is 1, positive 1 and negative 1 are both numbers that give that absolute value. But 0 is our exception. In question 17, they're asking us to use the number line to show why a number and its opposite have the same absolute value. So if I select negative 3, and its opposite, which is 3, we can see 3 is 3 units from 0, and -3, yes, I know those, I said it in the opposite way. -3 is 3 units from 0, and 3 is 3 units from 0. Question 18. A bank teller assisted 2 customers with transactions. One customer made a $25 withdrawal from a savings account. The other customer made a $15 deposit. We need to use absolute value to show the size of each transaction and then answer which transaction involved more money. More money is showing magnitude. So the first customer made a withdrawal, and that would be a -25. The absolute value of -25 is 25. The second customer made a $15 deposit, which is a positive number. The absolute value of 15 is 15. When we look at their absolute values, we can see that the first customer transaction involved more money. And then finally, question 19, which is farther from 0, -7 3/4 or 7 1/2, and use absolute value to defend your answer. Well, the absolute value of -7 3/4 is 7 3/4, and the absolute value of 7 1/2 is 7 1/2. So -7 3/4 is further from 0. So we can see that absolute value is the distance or the magnitude away from 0, not the direction. Complete the problem set to practice on your own.